Ometria is a technology company that four of us started about 2.5 years ago with one specific aim: to help retailers, online retailers and multi-channel retailers, but those selling online in particular, to truly understand their customers, to understand each one of them individually, personally, and then to use that data, because having that data without any action seemed pointless. So to be able to use it to power automated, personalized communication with each one of them, to drive higher engagement and to ultimately increase revenues in a clear and measurable way. And I'd like to start with an example. So a few weeks ago, we were involved in a competition called TechX Media, where we had to present to a panel of well-known judges from Facebook, from the biggest digital media agencies, and a retailer, one retailer in particular, who I think is sitting in the audience, but I'd be interested to see if anyone is able to guess which retailer we're talking about. And we won that competition. So I wanted to show you the presentation that we did and the examples that we used. This is Olivia. Olivia loves reading fashion magazines. She gets a little pocket-sized version, the handbag-sized version, so that she can take them with her everywhere she goes. And she loves shopping online. Her passion is sunglasses, as you can see, and she's very particular about the kinds of brands that she buys, the kinds of designers that she wears. She loves Dior. She can be persuaded to wear McQueen. She lives in Notting Hill, and she's a very typical customer for our luxury online store. This is Emily. Emily's passion is dresses. She'll wear the same one twice, but she'd really rather not. And she doesn't like magazines. She doesn't see the point. You can't click and buy stuff on paper. You can't easily move around. But what she does do is she does go to a lot of fashion blogs. She goes to a lot of fashion websites. And she very regularly comes to our store. She comes to our store to have a look and see what's available. She hasn't purchased yet. Emily lives in New York. That's her in Central Park. But she travels all the time, and she's very happy to shop online anywhere, as long as they'll deliver to where she lives. These are two very different people. Different in terms of where they're from, different in terms of what they like, different in terms of how they consume content, and different in terms of how they buy. And so when they come and they shop with us, and when they communicate with us and when we communicate with them, they are expecting a very different, very personalized, very individual experience. Olivia is already a loyal customer. We know that because we know everything that she's purchased, and we can see how that's happened. We see when she comes to the site what categories she's interested in, and we see her shopping habits. Her shopping habits are to buy a little bit at a time, but regularly, every couple of months, she'll come and she'll buy one item. And that builds up a profile for her, and it shows us that she is a very loyal, very high-value customer to our business. This is exactly the kind of customers that we want to acquire, and this is exactly what we want to turn all of our other customers into. Now, the biggest fear, of course, is that we're going to lose someone like that, because if you have a loyal customer, the last thing you want is for them to go away and start shopping somewhere else. Ometria measures engagement across a number of different inputs. You know, we see when people shop, we see when people buy, we see when they visit the site, what they look at. We take into account their email interactions. And by combining all of these inputs together, we, or more importantly you, are able to tell when individual customers are at risk of lapsing, just as Gregor was saying. By the way, on that, if you look over there, you've got an epic photo of Gregor in his natural habitat. So based on all of these inputs, Ometria is able to tell when someone like Olivia is at risk of lapsing. And based on that, able to give you the chance to individually send her an email which will be relevant, an email which will be timely, an email which will remind her of the fact that she used to be a loyal customer, she used to enjoy shopping with your store, and an email that will persuade her to come back and start buying again. And then after that, once she does come back and start buying again, further communication will take that into account, because she knows that she's a loyal customer. And all customers now know when they are loyal customers. And it gets harder because they expect you to know that as well, and they expect you to take that into account. And of course, all retailers want to speak to each one of their customers individually. That would be the dream. But only the most luxury of brands with the most expensive average order values are able to do that, because otherwise, how can we talk to thousands of customers? Well, Ometria as a platform was really developed to do just that. It's there to empower you, give you the ability to do it. Emily on the other hand, is not a loyal customer yet. Emily is a bit more bohemian and eclectic when it comes to life and shopping. She'll buy from anywhere. But when she does buy, she spends a lot. And so for us, given that she's only a subscriber but not yet a customer, for us, the most important thing to do is to turn her into Olivia, to turn her into an active, loyal, repeat customer. And because she hasn't bought yet, we might think that we don't know anything about her and there's nothing that we can do. But again, with Ometria, that's not the case, because we see everything she does when she comes to the website. She'll come to the site, she'll look at everything, she'll come to the shop, she'll start looking and browsing particular categories and items. And all of these are already signals about the sort of things that she's interested in. It's June, right? So obviously she's interested in swimsuits. She does a lot of traveling. She's about to go on her holidays. And by seeing which products she's been viewing but hasn't yet bought, we get an understanding of what we're likely to be able to do to persuade her to become a customer of our shop and our brand. And email is not the only channel. It is, of course, the most powerful. It is the cheapest. But there are other things that can be done to get a message in front of her. For example, based on the fact that we know that she's interested in this particular red swimsuit, a dynamic segment can be created in Ometria and synced to Facebook via their custom audience API, meaning that when she then goes to her Facebook newsfeed, she'll see a very subtle ad from a site that she already recognizes, but more importantly, for a product that we know that she's already interested in. And if that doesn't help, and if that doesn't convert her into a customer, then of course if she carries on coming and she carries on looking at the same product over and over, then a browse abandonment email will be sent personalized with a specific product, again encouraging her to come and finish that transaction. And these are just a few examples of what's possible with Ometria, but more importantly, there are a few examples of a bigger, more overarching approach to running an e-commerce business and to running a retail business. The approach of customer centricity. Now, James said it was an interesting phrase. It's something that's become more and more popular in, I guess, the Western world, and the more advanced of the e-commerce businesses and the retail businesses that will be running there. I would recommend a book by the founder of Zappos, Tony Say, called Delivering Happiness, which is fundamentally about customer centricity, about how they built a billion-dollar e-commerce business by focusing entirely on the customer. Gartner tells us that by 2016, which, let's not forget, is in like 3 months' time or 6 months' time. It's right around the corner. 89% of companies believe that customer experience will be their primary basis for competition, a number that's flown up in the last few years. And this makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, anything that a customer can buy from you, they can buy from somewhere else too. And with e-commerce, it's just a case of a few clicks. So how do we compete? How do we compete in this world where e-commerce is ultimately a perfect market, where price competitiveness no longer exists? We have to compete by providing an experience that's differentiated, by providing an experience that's better, that's more personalized, more tailored, that more fundamentally fills the need of the customers that come to your site. Another interesting quote from Gartner, that by 2016, nearly 90% of consumer product companies will have appointed a chief customer officer. This is currently my favorite statistic, because as many of you will know, we of course appointed a chief customer officer from the day we launched. These are the 4 founders of Ometria, and the very suave-looking gentleman on the left, who you just met just now, James Dunford-Wood, is and has always been our chief customer officer. Now, we're an innovative technology company. We currently don't really see any competition. What we're providing is new and wasn't available before. But we, of course, know that that's not going to last for very long. This will become a competitive space, and we have to guard against that. And we do that by choosing to put our customers first, and by making sure that one of the founders, one of the directors of the business, has a sole responsibility and does nothing but making sure that our customers are happy and that we continue building what they need. In an e-commerce environment where you have competition from the beginning, where you have competition constantly, where people are always trying to do the same things, it becomes even more important to be doing that. Here's a quote from Forrester. I suggest you don't try and read it. It's just an analyst sitting in a dark room somewhere trying to sound smart. It's actually a really useful quote. It's just that it's so long that it's impossible to decipher. It says, using data to understand your customers, you will acquire them for cheaper, and you will get them to spend more money with your store. He should have just written that. But instead of trying to decipher that, I'm always a big fan of examples. Gregor's obviously given us a great example of in reality how all of this works. But I wanted to cover a few more. Can we do a show of hands? Was anyone here for the last lifecycle to see the Swoon Editions talk? Anyone? Great, okay, cool. So about a third. For the other two-thirds, I'll just sort of briefly run through what Swoon Editions does. Swoon Editions are one of the fastest growing e-commerce businesses in the United Kingdom. They're venture-backed. Two of the best funds in the UK have invested in them. And they sell chairs, which seems a very strange thing to do, selling chairs. I wouldn't have immediately thought that that would have been a sort of a space where there was lots of opportunity. It's clearly competitive to do furniture, right? That's just the way it is. But they do it in a very specific way. They don't just sell any old chair. They sell the chair that is most likely to be bought by customers in the UK today. That's how they approach it. They first did a data-driven analysis. They asked customers questions. They researched on the internet. They saw what else was being sold. And they used that data-driven approach to work out what products, what chairs should be sold that would definitely sell. And anecdotally, that's worked very well. This is a Swoon Editions chair in my bedroom this morning. Our CTO, Chief Technology Officer Al James, has a Swoon Editions chair in his bedroom right now. And so do thousands and probably hundreds of thousands of other people, lots and lots and lots of other people. The way they approach it, and Ira described this in much more detail last time, but the concept of editions is that before they sell anything, before they manufacture anything, before they stock anything, they will first put it to their visitors, to their email list. They will first analyze the level of demand that is available for that particular product before they do anything about it. And only if they see that it is a product with an exceptional level of demand do they actually then add it to their overall inventory. Do they actually then go ahead with the manufacture and delivery and fulfillment of it. So there is no, let's buy some stock and hope that someone buys it. And heaven forbid no one does, and we have to throw it away. There's none of that. There's no company strategy telling us what to do. There's no seemingly smart people deciding in their heads that gut feel says this is what to do. There is only a relentless focus on the customer, on working out what that customer already wants, and then making sure that the manufacturing and e-commerce side actually just matches that. Let's take this up a little notch. Has anyone heard of Stitch Fix? Anyone? Typically, very few hands go up. See, almost no hands go up. It is amazing that no one's heard of Stitch Fix, because you really should. They are 3 years old. They spent $0 on marketing in the first year, and they do 150 million in turnover. And it was started by a university grad, literally at university. And they sell women's fashion, which is probably the only category that is more competitive than chairs. So again, how do they build a business that is that successful in such a short amount of time? They do it by, again, focusing on the customer. So their demographic is very specific. It is middle America mums. So it's women in the United States who don't live near a big city, so they don't have the sort of boutiques that we have here in London or in New York, but they still want to look good when they pick up their kids from school. So clearly they were interested in fashion, and what Stitch Fix did was deliver a box of fashion to them, and they tried different amounts of items, but in the end they settled on 6 because that was the one that worked the best. So they delivered a box of 6 items, and on average 2 to 3 are kept, and the rest are returned. And by doing that, it's more than just trying to sell to them. It was a feedback loop of data, of information about those customers. So they will be able to produce this overall profile, this interest graph for the specific demographic they were targeting. They were able to work out what products, what items those people were interested in, and they were also able to work out what people they shouldn't sell to, the customers that didn't fit the mold of the focus of the business. And doing that approach and analyzing all of that has allowed them to have, frankly, ridiculous metrics. Their retention metric, is a repeat purchase metric, is at 80% after 3 months, which I've not heard of any other company be able to do. Their growth in the first year was entirely viral. Of course, now they've had lots of venture capital, which they didn't even need. They chose to take in order to accelerate that growth and get to 150 million turnover in 3 years. But it was that understanding of the customer that got them there in the first place. So 2 very different businesses, one in furniture, one in fashion, but both successful for ultimately the same reasons. Successful because they put the customer first. And that's really the lesson for all of us. The lesson that if we stop worrying about the technological challenges, because if you think back in the day, building an e-commerce website was almost impossible. You'd need to have 2 million, you'd need to give it to IBM, and they'd spend 18 months trying to put something together, and it may or may not work at the end. You know, all of the stories of the early 2000s, of the original e-commerce 1.0 businesses. Luckily, that's not the case anymore. There is no longer a genuine challenge with building the technology, the logistics, the infrastructure. All the courier services are in place where, you know, we are in the UK, probably the most advanced market for e-commerce right now. So luckily, because we don't have to focus to that, as Gartner tells us, the competitive space has shifted from those challenges that have been solved to the challenges of understanding the customer and delivering an experience that's far better. You know, building a website on Magento, I'm sure most of you here on Magento, does not take long. Sure, it is a challenge. I'm not suggesting it's not, but with the right agency, with the right partner, it's fine. Plugging in a technology platform, I mean, plugging in Ometria into something like Magento takes only a few minutes. Whereas understanding the customer, you know, as Gregor was saying earlier, that is a project that is something that requires time, and it requires the technology and the platform that allows you to do that in the easiest possible way. But by doing it, by understanding the customer, you're able to then pivot and adapt your entire business model to make sure that they get exactly what they want and that you have no struggles with growth. Even if it's something that's very drastic. Here's a French company called RAD. RAD started out a few years ago as a daily deal site. That was the initial homepage on the left there. Today, RAD sells T-shirts and jumpers. That's it. They're a fashion store selling jumpers and T-shirts. But they understood that that is what they needed to do to have the epic growth that they've had. And they have grown extremely fast. Their customer database is huge. They are actually, in terms of customers, they're our biggest client in terms of database size. If that is what was necessary for them to succeed and grow that quickly, then adapting and adjusting that business model towards that was exactly the right thing to do, because we're all here trying to grow our businesses together. So the companies that understand this, the companies that believe in this and start acting on it, have a chance today to get ahead, because we're still early in this shift. We still have an opportunity to get ahead of the competition, ahead of this entire digital transformation that's happening, and get ahead in terms of delivering that customer experience that's relevant. So customer centricity, the time to do it is now. Thank you.
Ivan. Excellent. Does anybody have any questions for Ivan? I'm sure there are a few questions. Actually, I've got one quickly. Ivan's a fantastic future watcher. You've got your finger on the pulse of most of the tech startups in London. But actually, you talk about customer centricity and the customer being at the heart of how businesses ought to operate. In 5 years' time, obviously, you know, the differentiator in what businesses succeed or not will be to do with their relationship with the customer. Can you sort of project any kind of ideas about new ways that we might be communicating with customers in the future that we don't currently do in terms of things coming down the track?
Yeah, I guess that we see things as inputs and outputs from a data-driven way. So we've got all the information that we can collect about customers and all the ways that you can sort of communicate with those customers. So interesting things that we can't do now that we'd love to be able to do and that will come very soon. We know when someone comes and visits your site and what they look at. We don't yet know when somebody walks in a store, and we don't know what they look at when they're in the store. This is starting to change. Beacon technology allows you to pinpoint who they are and when they walk in. Immensely hard to do for an SME retailer, but for a large retailer with, you know, an app, a download and store base of millions, that's already becoming possible. We don't yet know where they're standing and what they're looking at, but there's technologies that are trying to solve that right now. So again, building up a profile of interests based on people in the physical world. And then outputs. So right now there are many easy outputs, sending emails, cheap, effective, but becoming less and less, I guess, exciting, because email's been around for 20 years. You know, it kind of continues, probably more than that. It continues to become more and more diluted as more people understand that, you know, it's the best channel, the easiest channel to get revenues. So the new ones, as we start looking at Facebook, great. Instagram, how does that work? Snapchat, how is Snapchat? And it is actually being used by brands right now to power growth. So all the new channels that arrive every couple of years become part of the overall kind of concept of customer centricity. They become an output for all of that. So there's lots of exciting things to come. We shall be in the middle of it as the brain.
Yeah, let's hope so. Great. Any other questions? One over here.
Yeah, so that's something we're really excited about. So basically, this is for the output, the offline output, right? So actually to show messaging out there. We are totally looking to see how the industry is going to come together, because different people do it in different ways. So display technology, for example, hasn't yet been centralized. There are lots of startups suggesting that you could always put a screen up, but there are lots of startups trying to drive that signal, the actual advert, into a physical display. So we don't currently. We're very much looking forward for there being a good, solid platform into which we can plug in to use as a way out. Just like Google Display Network works great for display advertising, just like Facebook works well for in social media advertising. But I'd be certainly very interested to talk to you about that and whether you've been able to identify a good, strong channel to be able to output those messages to. Yes, so actually Al here did once find an API that allows you to send a postcard, so physical DM message by API in the same way as our Trigger email works. So we could right now potentially redirect all of this to send an anti-lapse message in exactly the same visual format, but through the address, through the post to their address, through their letterbox. We haven't yet found anyone wanting to use it, because it obviously costs money, right? You're paying £1 per postcard, and it's obviously much more expensive than email. But again, this is something that we know we can do. We're just waiting for someone to be interested in giving it a go.
Yes, it's actually something I'd like to address on the panel later on, because I recently started buying Charles Tyrwhitt shirts, and one of the most impressive things was not the shirt itself, which I'm wearing and it's great, but the letter that came from the founder about a week after I made the purchase. Okay, so the signature wasn't, it was a printed signature, but still, it was a personal letter, no and you just had a little voucher for £10 off your next purchase, and that was a direct mail shot from Nick Wheeler, and it was personalised and worked very, very well. So I feel very warm towards Charles Tyrwhitt, partly because of the shirt, but also because of this nice letter that arrived from Nick. Anyway, so we've now got one question from Abby.
Yeah, so absolutely. So TechX Media, so we presented to 2 retailers. Can anyone guess, by the way, because the website was cropped, but it was their website? Did anyone tell? So it was Grazia Shop, but we also presented to Congo, who are the Amazon of Nigeria. So there were two retailers, as well as all of those other judges. And the concept was for a technology company to kind of compete against other technology companies. So one of the people we were up against directly in a presentation presentation to Grazia Shop was Power, who are a company who've had 100 million in investment, and with a very slick sales guy who came along, who had this amazing video that was personalized and customized, and a sort of printed badge with Congo and with Grazia Shop on there. And amazingly, we won purely because the judges and the retailers felt that our technology was more core and more vital to retail right now. And again, this comes down to having a chief customer officer and to Jalal, our chief product officer, to the work that they did during the early stages of the company by speaking with, and we spoke with 200 e-commerce marketers to work out what their number one problem was. And we built a solution that matched that. So at no point did we just sort of think, hey, let's build this. This didn't materialize out of our heads. This came out of all those conversations because we wanted to solve the number one problem for e-commerce marketers today.